Hello, friends. Welcome to the Cinemondo podcast. Just me today. I know I mentioned the writer's strike before. Well, the strike is over. The writer's part of the strike is over. The actors are still on strike, but it seems like it seems pretty encouraging that the writers reached such an agreement that seems to have made a lot of people happy. So everybody seems to be happy about it. One of the things, well, there's several things that they were asking for. I'm sure you know if you watch the news, they were wanting better residuals, better payment, better things, better payments, residual payments for streaming and newer technologies like that didn't really exist in the early days. So there weren't a lot of things in their agreements that addressed residuals for streaming. And somebody's getting rich off of that stuff, and it should be the people who created it, So that's what they were asking for. But the other thing they were asking for was some more regulations and sort of a more well-defined way of dealing with AI. And I know you've heard about AI. Everybody's heard about that. It's an interesting topic. It's a new tool. It's a new technology, and it's kind of scaring some people because of what power it has. It seems to have creative power. It seems to be able to create. But in fact, what it's doing is aggregating. You feed like with visual stuff, which we've all seen on our Facebooks and whatever. We've seen these weird pictures of, Mick Jagger singing a duet with, Cab Calloway or something. I don't know. These weird mashups of things that can't possibly exist, and those were, and you keep hearing, oh, it was created by AI. And so AI is able to take pictures of, Cab Calloway, a singer from a long time ago, and Mick Jagger and, maybe Taylor Swift or something, and you type in there, what if Cab Calloway and Taylor Swift did a duet with Mick Jagger playing trombone, and you type it in, and there's a photograph of what you just asked for. It looks like a photograph, and you put it online, and people are like, is that real? Did that really happen? I didn't realize Taylor Swift did a duet with Cab Calloway. Wow, it fools people. And that's the scary thing about it, is that you can also ask AI to create a painting that appears to have been done by Van Gogh or Salvador Dali, and it will go out into the vast internets and fish for all different pieces and put those pieces together and give you a painting that appears to have been painted by Salvador Dali of whatever you want, So some artists are scared because illustrators, people who make their living doing illustrations, people who do, album covers and artwork and paintings and do commissions and do comic books and things like that, people are getting a little bit nervous about the fact that producers will be able to create things like that without them, like without having to pay an artist. So there's a lot of deals going down right now, legalities, things like that. There was a recent ruling that said AI generated art cannot be copyrighted. That, I think, is pretty important. It's pretty profound. If a company is not able to trademark or copyright material that was created by AI, then they may find it in their best interest to continue hiring human beings, human artists. Same is with writing. There's a lot of people online right now talking about how the work of a lot of novelists and writers. There was an article I read about an author who was saying AI is generating books that sound or read and seem as though they were written by me. They have my style. They've fed in all of my books to this algorithm and said, write a new book by this author. And the AI application creates a book that sounds like them. It very likely doesn't have the same depth or emotional content because AI doesn't have emotions. It doesn't have much of a. It doesn't have much creativity in terms of the way a human does, where they, in terms of being able to invent new situations that are based on experience that you can tell when you read it. You know what I mean? Like, you can listen to music, you can watch a movie, you can read a book, and you can tell if the person who wrote that has the actual experience or not, you know. And but that's those are some of the questions of AI. The writer's strike, part of it was about AI. Part of it was about making sure that their work isn't sort of scanned into some computer program, and then the film companies can then just ask for a new script by this famous writer. You know, like take the writer who did the most the biggest selling movie of the year. Give us a script by that screenwriter that give us a new script that seems as though it was written by the person who wrote, Barbie, for instance. Give us another one of those. And then it spits out a new script that they would then hope would become a huge blockbuster that would appeal to people. But I think what is always going to be missing is the feeling of it, the emotions behind it, the experience behind it, whether we can sense that up front or not. I mean, we may still be fooled the way we are with those photographs we see online. We may be fooled, but I think what some of this negotiation, some of these deals that are being made is to not be able to fool people with AI. Writers will be able to use AI as a tool in their writing if it helps them generate their scripts, but they would still be written by a human. They would be using it as a tool in the way that an artist uses Photoshop as a tool. But the studios would not be able to generate scripts that sound like that person's writing. Hopefully that makes sense. I wanted to talk about some movies today, but this has gone on a bit long already, just about the nature of what happened with the writer's strike and what they were asking for, what the writers were asking for. The actors are actually asking for similar things, about residuals for streaming, and also more control about AI, because you can also, if you're going to generate a photograph of Taylor Swift singing with a long gone jazz singer, then you can also generate video of that. So if you can do that, then you can generate video of Tom Cruise, or you can generate video of Jimmy Stewart and Tom Cruise in a movie together or something. You can actually scan an actor who comes in for a day playing a bartender, and then you can take that scan and create what appears to be a living character in your film or television show and stick them in the background. So now every episode where you have a character visiting that bar, you have the same bartender in there, but you don't have to pay that actor again and again and again. You're just using that actor's image and the movements, and he just moves back and forth behind the bar, and maybe has a few interactions, and it's all programmed. But the actor doesn't get anything out of that. The actor gets paid for that one day, and then the studio gets to keep using that actor's visual appearance and their movements in 24 episodes of a TV series or something. And the actors are saying, no, if it looks like me, I should be getting the money. I should be getting paid. Like I said before, there was that great Black Mirror episode. It's called Joan is Awful. And if you haven't seen that, that's a great representation of what AI could possibly eventually do. It's not too far-fetched. But like I was saying, I wanted to talk about some movies that seem to sort of predict things along these lines. There was a movie called Looker, and that was like way back in the 70s. And there was of course, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and The Day the Earth Stood Still had some examples of artificial intelligence in the form of computers being able to generate things that fool people into thinking that something is real. Also, The Matrix, obviously. And when I say fooling people, I mean fooling people into thinking that this machine has intelligence. When we saw, when we see things like 2001 Space Odyssey, and we think of HAL, and we think HAL was basically a programmed machine programmed to sort of mimic humanity, but it also seemed to be able to make decisions. It also seemed to have the capacity to go nuts. He kind of lost control of his mind and lost control of his ability to be human. It's what it represented was the fact that machines don't have compassion. Evidently. Also, that lack of compassion can be seen as a positive when you want that machine to sort of coldly control something, like the way Klaatu was suggesting Gort would for civilizations in the galaxy that advance to a certain point, to a point where the rest of the people who live in the galaxy, the rest of the extraterrestrial folks out there who have achieved and higher intelligence, to the point where they can no longer trust us. We had developed weapons and things like that. So Gort and Klaatu show up on Earth in their cool flying saucer. Gort comes out and shows that he is completely impenetrable. You cannot stop Gort. Klaatu then tells the Earth, you can no longer be trusted. You have too much power now, and we have come to sort of assume control. And we do this by surrendering to our machines because they are cold and calculating. They don't use emotion to make their decisions. They decide things based on the best possible results. So, because they're machines, they're programmed. So in that way, they're better at deciding what's right for people than people are, because people are so full of frailties and emotional problems and bad judgment. We're so we're not great at being judges of each other. I mean, quite obviously, but other movies that have addressed that after this, there was a lot of science fiction movies with robots. I'm not going to go into that sort of idea of robots that look like people and walk around, or look like those sort of tin can looking things that walk around and talk, all the way up to things like Star Wars. But there were some films like Creation of the Humanoids where people were being replicated. There's Blade Runner, of course, with the replicants, but those are more almost like biologically generated things like the android and Alien. And but what I'm actually thinking about is films that address the idea of a computerized intelligence that then poses a threat, like HAL in 2001. And there's one movie that I really like. It is a fascinating film. It's a very early film. It's a very early example of a movie that addresses that. It's 1970. It's called Colossus: The Forbin Project. And it stars Eric Braeden as Charles Forbin, and has a lot of familiar faces from television and movies. It's got an actor named Gordon Pinsent as the very Kennedy-appearing president of the United States. The organization that creates Colossus seems like a government-funded thing. Forbin creates this massive computer system that's underground, under a mountain, surrounded by a radioactive moat. It cannot be, penetrated or attacked. And in a sort of ceremonious documentary-style intro to the film at the beginning, which is really interesting, they did a good job of kind of hitting the look of the times as far as how television was created and how things were addressed on television, and the idea that the United States has sort of teamed up with the scientists and they have decided to give control of our nuclear arsenal to a machine. Because much like in Day the Earth Stood Still, it seems we've gotten to a point where things are so deadly dangerous that giving a human being control of that button, that they say the big red button to launch the war, is too dangerous, because a human being can go nuts, as we see in our politics. A human being, there are certain people in politics that when you think about the idea of them having the power to launch an attack, people that are like amazingly sensitive and very weak, who just can't tolerate it. And if they think somebody insults them, imagine that kind of person getting so mad that they hit that button. So the idea here with the Forbin project is that they've taken that ability away from human beings and given it to this computer called Colossus. And during this press conference at the beginning of the movie, Colossus announces that it has detected another system. And everybody is like, what? There can't be another system like this, because this is the biggest computer ever made, and it's American made, and we did it first. But they look into it, and yeah, there's another one in Russia. Apparently there's a spy somewhere who's been leaking all this information, and they built their own anything. Anyway, the film is fascinating in that it was made in 1970, and it kind of predicts these ideas about computers being on networks and the idea of the internet. And things back then, anything you saw back then was science fiction about computers, was kind of naive in a way, as far as the computer, sort of like, Robbie the Robot or something like that, or, The Invisible Boy, or any of these things that had robots in it. They were all kind of, if they did develop feelings, it was always depicted as a kind of a cute thing. Like, it develops feelings for the people who created it, and it saves their lives, and it goes out and fights, and maybe it dies, and you realize, oh, you were loyal, a loyal servant, But the idea sort of changed a little bit as science fiction got a little bit more sophisticated. Science fiction literature was always pretty sophisticated compared to what you would see on television or in a lot of the movies. But with something like the Forbin project, you got a story that was a bit scary and a little bit cynical about the idea of technology. The computer is not cute. It's not going to save your life. It's not going to be like this friend, this mechanical friend, or this robot friend. It's like Hal. Hal was trying to, I think, make the right decision and sort of realize that the humans were in the way, and that it needed to complete this mission, and the human beings were not really helping, or not necessary, or something. It's interesting to try to analyze what were Hal's motives. But in the Forbin project, it's pretty clear the computer is a computer. And the film, although, made before everybody had computers and understood computers, computers were thought of in those days as these massive machines that, you fills up a warehouse-sized space, and you type in, computer, what is 2 + 2? And the computer would think, and then a piece of paper would come out, and you would read it, and you would say 4. And that was kind of what computers were. They computed, but the idea in science fiction, when it got a little bit interesting, was when you started being able to ask the computer, what is your opinion? And the computer would say, I think it is best not to do that. It would have an opinion about something. And in some cases it would speak, like the way Hal could speak. In the Forbin project, the computer doesn't speak at first, but it gradually starts making demands, and it wants to be able to see. It wants to be able to speak. And eventually it gets a voice and kind of a face in a way. There's a speaker mounted on a rod that kind of becomes sort of like the focal point, the face of Colossus. And eventually it very efficiently sort of takes over the world. And it's not really a spoiler, because if it has sort of just a happy ending, the computer did great, it wouldn't really be much of a drama. But what happens here, the idea of it is, watch out what you do, Pandora's box of technology. Once you plug in the power and you give this machine the power to stop you from unplugging it, in fact, what you're doing is you're handing over everything to you're sort of surrendering your free will in a way over to this computer system, in the hopes that efficiency, computer style efficiency, is good. That you want something that makes these sort of emotionless decisions, that don't have anything to do with opinions or judgment, or I don't get a good feeling from that person, or that person looks guilty, those kind of feelings that humans have. Or, I just don't like him. I just don't like him, and so he must be guilty. Those kind of people, when you have them on a jury or as a judge, they're not good. They're bad. They're biased. And a computer can't be biased, I guess. It can't be biased in those human ways, because humans are so full of feelings. So if you take the feelings out of the equation and you reduce it down to just the mathematics of a decision, what is the best choice? Computer, and the computer says, I think this is the best choice. And that's what you do. And you a human would still have the ability to decide whether or not to take the computer's advice. But in the Forbin project, they hand that over. They relinquished control of their own humanity as far as making these momentous decisions about nuclear war and international relationships. And at the time, of course, it was Russia and America. And it's an interesting film. I think it's interesting to watch. I think you might like it if you like science fiction. It's a pretty good example of science fiction in the true sense of the word. I always like to differentiate between movies like Star Wars, which I think are more fantasy, and films that are actually science fiction, which is the kind of fiction that is based on some sort of science. It's like a scientific principle or a scientific idea, or an idea that's based in a type of science. And this is computer science, and some science fiction is based on space-time physics, that kind of thing, quantum type stuff, faster than light, and how that affects the time-space. But this one is computer science in its early days, and it's absolutely fascinating to watch this film now, because of the things that, of course, that they got a little bit wrong, but more interestingly, the things that they got right about the idea of handing over control of something to a non-human intelligence, a machine-based intelligence, which seems to be what's happening with AI on to a lower degree. Although I do read some articles about a nuclear power plant that's controlled by AI. I don't know how much control, or if that AI has the power to suddenly lock the doors and say, no, I want you to do this, or else I'm gonna go critical mass. And you just don't know. You don't know. And that's the scary part. That's the science fiction part. So I recommend watching the Forbin project. It's called Colossus, the Forbin Project, 1970, directed by Joseph Sargent, great director who did The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, among other many great things. It's interesting in the way that it has a relationship to current events, related to AI. It doesn't really address much in terms of what the writer's strike or the actor's strike is about. For that, take a look at an old Michael Crichton film called Looker, which is a pretty interesting movie about like way before computers were common in Photoshop and all that kind of stuff. But the idea of scanning visual likeness and using sort of computer generated images and things like that. It's pretty interesting. It's pretty ahead of its time. It's not the best film ever made, but it's interesting to watch if you want to get an idea of how people were thinking about computers, especially super smart people like Michael Crichton, who, as we all know, has written some and created some really interesting books about things like resurrecting dinosaurs, which turns out to be not a great idea. But The Matrix also goes there. A few other films, you know them as well as I do. The movies that have rogue machine intelligences that sort of decide what is best for humans or what they think is best to do. Like what should we do about these humans? The AI questions that were part of the writer's strike and the actor's strike issues, not really that scary as far as world wars and whatnot, but they are a bit scary in terms of the future of entertainment. There's a lot of things that we watch and we don't know, we don't really know where it came from now. We read articles and they sound weird. They don't seem to be very well written. Have you had that experience where you read an article online and one of your news aggregators or whatever, and you're reading this article and it just seems kind of written in this weird circular, like, why did they say that? And you realize, what? I'll bet that's written by AI. It doesn't really have a human feel to it. It doesn't have a human touch. It doesn't have a sense of a compassionate living person having written it. It seems like it was aggregated from a bunch of different sources and a bunch of different types of writing styles that have been fed into it, and it puts it in the digital blender and it makes something that resembles an article. And that's my fear. It's everybody's fear, I think, with the entertainment industry when they start, if they start producing scripts based on AI stories and things like that. Is it going to have that weird, this just doesn't smell like it was created by a living human? It may have some kind of inherent wrongness to it. And then eventually maybe they can program that out of it and fix it and say, don't do that, But I think knowing that something is created by AI is the thing that damages it, in my opinion. Even if I read some poetry or some prose or hear a song or something that was created by AI, to my ears, my eyes, it may seem, it seems like a poem, it seems like a story, it seems like a song. But then if I know how it was created, if I know that it wasn't, it sounds kind of prejudiced, but if I know that it wasn't created by a human, then I don't have the same feeling about it. That I think might be one of the problems ultimately with AI, is the idea that a human was not there to give birth to this idea or this song or this story. It wasn't created from experience or experience of life. It wasn't created as a living document of what it is to be human or to be alive. It was created by aggregating, by pulling bits and pieces from the internet and finally assembling something out of things that human writers have created in the past to try to mimic human writers or to try to fool us into thinking that it's real. But maybe that's all I'm going to say about it for now. This has become a very long rant about AI. But hopefully you think about it a little bit and realize that that's part of what the actors and the writers were striking about here in Hollywood. And it's great news that everybody seems to be happy about this. The solution seems to have made everyone happy. It addressed at least most of the issues. I'm hearing from people, a lot of my friends, pretty much everybody I know works in the industry, and everybody seems to be like, yeah, it's a win. They're calling it a win. So hopefully we'll see cool movies and TV shows coming up that were written by human beings, and that will keep using our machines for what the machines are good for and what they do for us as tools, but that we will not let them replace the actual work of a living human being with life experience and feelings and emotions and all those things. If those don't seem real, I think there's that uncanny valley thing that we're always going to be able to sort of sense something's off about it. But anyway, thanks for listening. And I'm going to maybe talk about more science fiction movies in the future, because I really like science fiction. But for now, I'm going to stop talking about AI. And thanks for watching, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye.